Thank you for joining us on This Week in Turkey. I am Murat, Tursan. Tonight, the Turkish political scene heats up. Who is going to be the opposition's presidential candidate? Medyascope contributor Berk Esen will be joining us to make sense of it all. An appeals court overturns President Erdoğan's defamation case against Kılıçdaroğlu. Turkey's rent crisis worsens, and we'll have the latest on Turkey on the world stage. Our main story tonight, it has been a busy couple of weeks in Turkish politics as the chair of the anti-immigration Victory Party nominates CHP's Ankara Mayor Mansur Yavaş, which is rather unprecedented. Nominees don't usually come from other parties. So it left everyone to wonder why Özdağ would nominate Yavaş. Sure, both men come from a nationalist background, and Mansur Yavaş is polling 20 points above President Erdoğan in poll aggregates, which in politics is an ocean, an uncrossable ocean. Mansur Yavaş makes Erdoğan, the two-decade de facto ruler of a country, look like an underdog. Sure, Erdoğan has more than a year to cross that ocean, and in politics, a year is an eternity. But he might not have to after all, because Yavaş says that he isn't interested in the nomination, as he is but a simple public servant with no presidential aspirations. Meanwhile, one of the opposition party coalition leads, Temel Karamollaoğlu, the chair of the Islamist Felicity Party, says that there may be a third coalition. And also the MHP chair, Devlet Bahçeli, throws in a couple of conspiracy theories regarding the candidate for good measure, because why not? So, what's going on in the opposition? Is the coalition breaking up? And who is going to run for president anyway? Dr. Berk Esen will be with us in just a little bit. So, before that, let's get a recap of the week.
The political scene is once again home to heated debate after Victory Party chair Umut Özdağ nominates CHP's Ankara Mayor Mansur Yavaş for the presidential ticket in 2023. So far, it's unknown who the opposition's nominee will be, but it's not only the constituents who desperately want an answer, but the ruling government as well. AKP is also calling out the opposition and demanding that they announce a candidate. Victory Party chair Özdağ has said the 6 leaders of the opposition parties are not going to elect each other, and if they elect someone else, as I have mentioned before, we are ready to offer Mr. Yavaş our party's nomination. Previously silent on his nomination, CHP's Ankara Mayor Mansur Yavaş responded to the Victory Party's nomination for the first time in a while. I don't comment on these things. I think a mayor should solely focus on carrying out his duties. One should stay out of the internal politics of other parties. My position remains the same. Sometimes we even witness our political opponents speak likewise, but I am standing my ground. I am never going to respond to these things. I am not involved in politics. I see myself as a public servant. These nominations are done without my consent and prior knowledge, and I am hard at work at my own post. Ruling coalition partner MHP's chair Devlet Bahçeli also commented on the nomination during his party's weekly group meeting on Tuesday. Bahçeli remarked that the candidate for the ruling coalition is obvious, President Erdoğan, and further criticized the opposition. We know who our candidate is. When is your rotten candidate going to be nominated? Are you waiting on orders from cryptic powers? I suppose the global powers have not told you their candidate yet.
Back with us on the program, Assistant Professor of Political Science and Medyascope contributor, Dr. Berk Esen. Doctor, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Now, Doctor, Victory Party chair Umut Özdağ kind of threw out a bomb last week and nominated Ankara Mayor Mansur Yavaş for the presidential ticket, and all of this reignited debate that has been ongoing for the last few years here. Everybody's kind of waiting with bated breath to see who the opposition's candidate will be. CHP chair Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu has been throwing out subtle signals that he's going to run, and every once in a while someone from the CHP will blurt out that he's going to run. Now, there are 2 schools of thought on this. Either the opposition is playing some sort of Machiavellian 4-dimensional chess, and they're faking it like Kılıçdaroğlu is going to be the candidate, then swap him out last minute for a more popular candidate, or they're playing checkers and they're going to run Kılıçdaroğlu. So, what's your take? Is this Star Trek chess or tic-tac-toe against a chicken?
I think it's somewhere in between those 2 options or 2 scenarios. I think that Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, as the chairman of CHP and the main opposition party leader, has strong chances of becoming the presidential candidate or the nominee, and he genuinely desires that. And so that's why he's been campaigning to become the nominee by basically negotiating with other opposition party leaders, as well as trying to increase his popularity, trying to increase his popular appeal across the country. And indeed, especially over the last few months, he's been generating, he's been trying to shift the public opinion, criticize the government on a personal level, and really attacking President Erdoğan, so that there will be a one-to-one battle, so that voters will get accustomed to the idea that Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu will carry the mantle of the opposition. However, I think both other opposition party leaders as well as Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu know that at this point, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu has electability issues. Looking at the opinion polls, it seems that among the other potential candidates, such as Mansur, Ekrem İmamoğlu, or even Meral Akşener, the chairman of E-Party, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu trails all three of them, and seems to have difficulty really beating President Erdoğan if an election were to be held today. So that's why I think in Kılıçdaroğlu's mind, he still has a few more months to continue campaigning, almost as the sole candidate of the opposition, because he has really prevented others from discussing the candidate issue, which of course have given him an advantage. He's the only one under the spotlight in this particular question. He hopes to increase his popularity level and support across the country, so that by the time that opposition party leaders begin to formally discuss the presidential candidate, the joint presidential candidate for the opposition, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu will be in a favorable position, because, of course, as the leader of the main opposition party, he has the advantage of becoming the first candidate. And if in the opinion polls, he could really surpass the other candidates or come close to the support level of other candidates, I think he will be the nominee. But if he fails to do that by the end of summer or early fall, I think the momentum will shift towards other potential candidates, such as Mansur and Ekrem İmamoğlu. So that's why I think Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu has not yet decided on this issue. He knows that, as well as obviously the other opposition party leaders, that this is a decisive election. And if they were to nominate a candidate who ends up losing the election, this is really going to cost them their political career, and they will be known for this defeat. So that's why I think Ekrem İmamoğlu and Mansur still has a strong chance of becoming nominee, and I think those three are the top candidates at this point. And each candidate has a set of advantages as well as disadvantages as we head into this election year.
I see. And getting back to Mansur Yavaş's nomination by the Victory Party now, we know Victory Party as a single-issue anti-immigration party that polls around 1%, though as it has been gaining some steam as of late. Now, it struck many by surprise when Victory Party chair Ümit Özdağ nominated Ankara Mayor Mansur Yavaş for president. Mansur Yavaş predictably has said that he doesn't want to get involved in any of this. Now, again, is this 4D chess or checkers? Some say that Özdağ nominated Yavaş because they both have their roots in MHP and he thinks Yavaş will carry out his Victory Party's platform. Others say that Özdağ is trying to push the opposition into announcing their candidate by a process of elimination. Or maybe is there a third option we're missing entirely? What do you think? What is Özdağ trying to do here?
Well, of course, this was really to my knowledge, this was really the first time that the high-profile politician nominated someone else from outside his party. Because, until now, we've come across CHP politicians who rooted for Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, or, of course, E-Party politicians supporting Meral Akşener. Of course, many private citizens on social media declare their support for various candidates, but this was quite new and unprecedented. And obviously, it generated excitement in the public opinion because, voters are curious about who the candidate will be, but it led to worry and internal discussion among the opposition parties. And I think this was really the first thing that Ümit Özdağ wanted to do. Right, he wanted. It's the same thing that he's been doing with the Syrian refugee question. Right, rather than really trying to resolve the question, rather than really trying to propose credible positions that would really resolve this problem, he's trying to get his name out, increase his name recognition, generate support within the public opinion. And it's the same thing with regards to Mansur Yavaş, right? So he conveys to the voters that he's actually a responsible nationalist politician. He's really trying to do what's best for the country. And that's why actually he's not going to nominate himself, but someone else who could really get the job done. I think that's the message that he's trying to convey. And in that sense, really, Özdağ's name was brought up. And we've been discussing Özdağ for the last week or so, maybe even more than a week, even though, as you rightly pointed out, his party's support base is quite minimal, maybe not even 1%, according to the opinion polls. The second thing that I think he wants to do is that, of course, he's a former member of E-Party. And of course, Mansur Yavaş, even though he's not technically a member of E-Party, comes from a nationalist background. And so that's why he has a lot of appeal among E-Party voters. Now, by mentioning Mansur Yavaş's name, he prematurely forced opposition party leaders to discuss this issue, which then, which then showed us that there were internal rifts within these parties with regards to this question. And he also complicated the situation for Meral Akşener, because I don't know if Mansur Yavaş was Meral Akşener's candidate. And even if he is Meral Akşener's candidate, or he will be at some point, I don't think that Meral Akşener wants to get associated with Ümit Özdağ. So by basically bringing up Mansur Yavaş's name, he first of all reduces the possibility of Yavaş getting nominated. But at the same time, if he ends up becoming the joint candidate, and he has high chances of doing so, then we would all know that Ümit Özdağ was the first high-profile politician to do that. So it's in that sense, it's a complicated game. And the last point, and this is rather speculative, so I don't want to push this hard, but I think, in promoting Mansur Yavaş as the joint candidate, Ümit Özdağ said a few things that really worried the opposition, I think. Well, first of all, he said that he would support Mansur Yavaş, but no other politician, such as Ekrem İmamoğlu or Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, which of course worries opposition party leaders because they want to have this power to nominate a joint candidate. And once they declare the candidate, they hope and assume that all the other opposition voters would rally behind this candidate. And Ümit Özdağ suggested that this may not be the case, right? So I don't think that the opposition party leaders were happy about that. And the second point, and the speculative point, is that he said Mansur Yavaş is really the only candidate who could really organize a smooth transition out of this presidential system. Now, I don't know what he means with smooth transition and for whom. Now, considering the fact that Ümit Özdağ has some connections within the security apparatus, some people thought that Ümit Özdağ was trying to play this complicated game of actually both giving the message that actually some people within the state apparatus may have preferences about this transition process, and that Mansur Yavaş, as a nationalist politician, is really the top person to do that. And two, I think Ümit Özdağ is trying to put himself in pole position as the contact person who could help Mansur Yavaş undertake this transition. I think that's Ümit Özdağ's plan. It's a complicated and smart, strategic, almost a Machiavellian plan, and it really generated some worry within the opposition ranks. But after a week, I think the opposition party leaders are now in damage control.
I see. And let's go back to that point that you made, that there may be a rift in the opposition coalition. Now, the Felicity Party chair, Temel Karamollaoğlu, said in passing this week that there may be a third opposition coalition. Now, he backpedaled a little bit today and clarified, no, I meant that there could be coalitions inside of coalitions, whatever that means. Now, ever since the new election bill was introduced that looks to curb the power of coalitions, everyone here has been asking, could this be the end of political coalitions in Turkey, especially considering Felicity Party? Because being an Islamist party, ideologically, Felicity Party doesn't really fit into the coalition anyway, but this has all of us wondering, what's going on inside the coalition? They can't announce a candidate. Some parties are floating third coalitions. Is there disagreement in the opposition? Is there a chance they could break up or lose members? Your take?
Well, there's certainly disagreement within the or among the six opposition parties, and I think this is quite normal because, well, I mean, first of all, these six opposition parties are coming from very diverse ideological backgrounds, and I think it's quite normal that both at the cadre level as well as among their voters, there's disagreement on many issues, and of course, these disagreements come up, even though I think opposition party leaders have really put up an enormous effort to sort of to prevent such rifts from coming to surface. But of course, they do from time to time. And of course, the election bill really changed the calculations to a certain extent, and it really compels all six of these opposition parties to reconsider their strategy, because even though the logic of the alliance is still there for minor parties, because they still need to cross the 7% electoral threshold, and that's not necessarily a very easy feat for at least four of these parties, right? So except for CHP and E party, I think all other opposition parties will have difficulty crossing the electoral threshold, even if they run together under a joint party list, because Deva seems to have around 2 percentage points according to opinion polls. The Felicity Party or the Future Party are on the 1% mark, and Democrat Party, I think, has even lower support. So even if their votes were combined, they will have difficulty crossing the electoral threshold. So I still find it to be a low probability, a small possibility that these parties will break away from the alliance, will form their own separate third alliance, as Temel Karamollaoğlu mentioned, because a very risky strategy. And even if somehow they manage to cross the 7% threshold, because their support base is evenly spread across the country, they would have difficulty actually getting MPs. I think they would be at a disadvantage. So most likely, what Karamollaoğlu is doing is that he's contemplating different scenarios or different options in order to increase his party's bargaining position. Because, of course, the larger parties, such as CHP and E party, know that after the election bill changed, it increased their own bargaining power. And most likely these small parties will be compelled to run candidates under the party list of either CHP or E party or both, which would then reduce what they can get from these parties. By basically threatening to go with a third alliance, they're trying to sort of, increase the bargaining position, sort of like a mutually assured distraction. If we leave, you lose, we lose. It's a suboptimal outcome for both sides. So let's negotiate. Maybe give us a few more MPs in your party list during the election. So that's also a possibility. And I think he's also contemplating, if his party ends up running under the party list of CHP or E party, there are different options, right? So these four parties may get divided up two by two between CHP and E party, with maybe E party getting Democrat Party, as was the case in 2018, and Gelecek Partisi, and CHP getting Deva and Saadet, or these four right-wing parties could run under the party list of E party, right? So there are different options, and I think all options are on the table. And we're going to see these options being discussed both behind closed doors, but every now and then in the public opinion. And of course, these discussions will have repercussions also for the nomination process of the joint presidential candidate, because of course, the smaller parties, if they go along with the choice of CHP and E party, would want some kind of compensation, at least in the parliamentary election. So we're going to see some tough negotiations. I wouldn't necessarily get worried too much, but of course it's going to be an uphill battle for these opposition parties, who has to juggle through the strategic needs of surviving under an increasingly authoritarian regime, catering to their base, which may have different ideological needs, and somehow resolving problems at the elite level. And that's why I think it's going to be an uphill battle.
I see. God, I don't know that anybody could untangle this ball of yarn better than you. That is the Turkish politics. Dr. Berk Esen, thank you for making sense of all of it, and thank you for being able to join us tonight. You're always a treat. Glad to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
In other news, President Erdoğan's defamation case against CHP chair Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu has been thrown out by the higher appeals court this week, reason being that the court has decided that Kılıçdaroğlu's allegations were in public interest. President Erdoğan and his family had sued Kılıçdaroğlu 3 separate times for defamation when Kılıçdaroğlu alleged that Erdoğan and his family were hiding millions, if not billions, in secret accounts in the Isle of Man, a well-known tax haven. Well, President Erdoğan didn't take kindly to that and sued Kılıçdaroğlu 3 times. 2 of those cases were thrown out, but the third one ruled against Kılıçdaroğlu and cited, you can't just go around making accusations against the head of state. Well, the higher appeals court did not think so and has overturned the decision by the lower court. And in a country where the rule of law and the independence of the judiciary is always a matter of concern, Kılıçdaroğlu calls this a victory not only for him, but for the nation.
Sayın Genel Başkanımızı haftalık sunuş konuşmalarını yapmak üzere kürsüye davet ediyorum.
Main opposition party CHP chair Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu wins a case against President Erdoğan this week, as the higher appeals court drops the defamation suit against Kılıçdaroğlu. Back in October of 2017, at his party's weekly group meeting in the National Assembly, Kılıçdaroğlu had alleged that President Erdoğan's family was hiding millions of dollars in secret accounts in the Isle of Man, an autonomous territory of the UK and a well-known tax haven. Kılıçdaroğlu was sued 3 separate times by President Erdoğan for defamation for his allegations of fraud. 2 of the cases were thrown out for lacking legal basis, but the third case was ruled in favor of President Erdoğan. The court ruled that as the head of state, President Erdoğan could not be seen as a regular politician and that the comments Kılıçdaroğlu made were not in the public interest and fined him 459,000 lira. However, the ruling was overturned by the higher appeals court this week, citing that the comments were indeed in the public interest, throwing out the case. Upon the ruling, Kılıçdaroğlu's attorney posted on Twitter, "Appeals court taught Erdoğan a lesson this time. Kılıçdaroğlu was proven right in the Isle of Man case, and we won. The appeals court has overturned the decision by these criminals, so-called judges, and threw out hundreds of thousands in fines. We will continue to win and continue to teach lessons. This we promise." Kılıçdaroğlu replied to the comment, "Don't be fooled by this legal theater put on by the person in the palace. He's losing the cases one by one."
And in the economy, the central bank holds fast on the interest rates this week, which no doubt made many breathe a sigh of relief. And you don't see President Erdoğan talking about interest rates very much these days either. To do a recap, President Erdoğan had made it his life's mission to cut interest rates down from 20%, and a few central bank presidents and committee members who refused met the chopping block along the way. Well, President Erdoğan finally got his way, or at least half of his way, as the current central bank head, Şahap Kavcıoğlu, continued to cut interest rates down, landing at 14%. But every time he did, the lira lost massive value. The lira has continued to gradually lose value, coming up from 13.5 to $1 to 14.5 today. But it's really inflation that is squeezing the country. The government says inflation is up to 60%, whereas independent researchers say it's 140%. What inflation is hitting the hardest, however, are real estate prices. Since last year, housing prices have doubled in some places and tripled in others. But CHP MP Özgür Karabat says actually it's immigrants who are to blame, saying that half to 30% of new housing development is being purchased by non-citizens.
The Turkish Central Bank Monetary Policy Committee, chaired by Central Bank President Şahap Kavcıoğlu, held fast on the policy interest rate at 14% yesterday, making it the 3rd month in a row the central bank kept interest rates steady after its last reduction to 14% in December 2021. Meanwhile, the real estate crisis in Turkey continues as most units become unaffordable for most people. According to some real estate indexes, price per square meter for real estate is up 159% in Istanbul, 116% for Ankara, 119% in Izmir, 143% in Antalya, and 172% in a province of Mersin. And rental prices per square meter are up 166% in Antalya and up to 123% in Muğla. Rental prices nationwide have reportedly tripled in the last year, the current rate being 33 liras per square meter or $2.25 per square foot a month. CHP Istanbul MP and the member of CHP's Economic Policy Committee Özgür Karabat said that the current housing crisis could lead to a total society collapse. According to information he obtained through realtors, half of all new developments in some districts in Istanbul are purchased by non-citizens. Karabat remarked, "Yesterday, I went to Kayaşehir municipality in the Başakşehir district. They are saying that non-citizens purchased half of the new developments there. This place was touted by AKP as a satellite city and by no means can be called a city center. Some districts in Istanbul are reporting up to 30% of sales going to non-citizens as well."
And in foreign relations, Turkey continues to have its heart set on making peace in the region. Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu met with Israeli press in Ankara, where he remarked that the newfound friendly relations between Turkey and Israel could lead to a gas pipeline deal. The potential pipeline deal would carry Israeli natural gas from the eastern Mediterranean into Turkey and possibly feeding the hungry nation and maybe even beyond. As gas prices skyrocket with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, all options appear to be on the table to meet the region's natural gas needs. On the U.S. front, State Department spokesperson Ned Price was asked about Turkey's F-16 deal and the fate of the S-400 missile defense system Turkey had bought from Russia. The response was vague as vague gets. Price did not really comment on the F-16 deal, but when asked if the United States finds it acceptable that Turkey maintains Russian missiles, Price simply said that Turkey is a valuable NATO ally, so not much of an answer there, but not an outright no either. It's uncertain thus far if Turkey's efforts of making peace in the region will actually pay off, but nonetheless, here are the rundown of last week's events.
Voluntary financial contribution.
Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu met with Israeli journalists in Ankara yesterday. Çavuşoğlu responded to questions regarding the Turkish-Israeli gas pipeline in light of the natural gas squeeze caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Çavuşoğlu remarked that there was a potential for a deal between the two nations. The potential gas pipeline could run from Israeli waters into Turkey and perhaps beyond, potentially reducing Turkey and Europe's dependence on Russian natural gas. Çavuşoğlu remarked, "This project will also help improve the political relations between Turkey and Israel, but you don't need to limit the relations between the two countries to just one pipeline project." On the US front, Turkey is still vying to the F-16 deal to go through, but despite the recent hinting at a potential go-ahead by the Biden administration. State Department Ned Price was still vague when asked if sanctions on Turkey for buying the S-400 missile defense system will be lifted. "I don't have any response to you for that. As you know, the sanctions are written into legislation that's mandated by law. We are in the continuing discussion with our Turkish allies about our concerns over Turkey's position of the S-400 system, and that's a conversation that's ongoing." Responding to question if Turkey not following the sanctions on Russia was acceptable, Price responded, "Well, in case of Turkey, Turkey is an important NATO ally. Turkey has made important contributions to the effort to support the Ukrainian people and to hold Russia to account. Turkey is a NATO ally. NATO has put forward some very firm statements. NATO has coordinated very closely on the various forms of support. The Turks have also played a very significant diplomatic role, seeking to bring together the Russians and the Ukrainians to see if there can be any diplomatic progress can be achieved."
And with that, that's it for us in This Week in Turkey. I have been Murat, Tursan, and thank you for joining us.
Türkiye'nin sivil, bağımsız, özgür ve çoğulcu bir medya ortamına ihtiyacı var. Medyascope 20 Ağustos 2015'te bu ihtiyacı karşılamak üzere yola çıktı. Ama yolumuz uzun. Bu yolculukta bize Patreon veya YouTube'un katıl butonu üzerinden katkıda bulunabilirsiniz. Destek verin, sizinle güçlenelim.